anything. So it's the same as I just put it on my phone. So the only use for money is to buy good. Right? So if I don't have, if money does not have any investment value, then the only demand comes from me buying the output of the economy. And suppose the economy has output Y, we cannot buy everything every day. There's a turnover. So we buy a constant fraction of total good produced.
What's K?
K means a constant fraction, that fraction of good that we purchase every day. So in one day, we only buy a certain, say 10% of the total good we produce. Because we don't buy everything every day. We don't finish good soon enough. So that's a constant. That would be purely transaction demand. We call this part the transaction demand. So we only use that money to buy stuff, basically. And that's a constant fraction of Y. So that's why it starts here. And then it goes here with a positive slope. The reason is the higher the interest rate, the higher the opportunity cost of holding physical money. That's why the higher, the lower the demand. If the interest is higher, I want to put money either in stock or in bond or anything that can earn you interest. So I want less money, physical money in the hand, so the demand is decreasing. So that's why the higher the interest rate, the lower the quantity demanded for money. Yeah, this should technically be quantity demanded, obviously. And so
the interest rate must stay. Which interest are we talking about?
the interest rate is the investment interest rate. So if you invest, so it's like the rate of return on bond. So if I invest, I get the risk-free return of the bond. So then these things will explain why demand for the economy is so good. And it ends here. And why money supply is vertical in the last one. So then we have this diagram. So going from what we did a lot earlier when we do fiscal policy. When we do fiscal policy, we are doing an increase in government spending or increase in tax, which causes change in Y. Now we have monetary policy, which says if there's an increase or decrease in money supply, we want that to change Y as well. So that would be how to connect the things that we have been doing, because it seems fairly random why we suddenly go to money. But here it goes back to the same idea. So the second policy that the government can use is monetary policy. So like last time what we did is suppose government's Bank of Canada buy bond or buy currency from there. Buy currency or buy bond, they can actually increase or decrease money supply. So after money supply is increase or decrease, we want to see how this affects money. And we want to know how much does it affect. So then we have the first diagram like this. This is the demand, this is supply, this is money supply, this is money demand. This is quantity, this is interest rate. So we say we are at equilibrium here. And the next diagram is called marginal efficiency of investment. So what this says is given a particular, so what this curve means is the higher the interest rate, the less I want to invest. So how to explain this? The good way to explain this is the investment in the Y equals to CIG investment. So remember Y is CIG, net export. So this I is the I here. So this I obviously is not financial investment. It's not bond. Bond is not included in GDP. So the investment here is investing in physical assets. So you say, for example, this investment would be if I buy a house or buy a building, or if I buy a machine to produce stuff. So if you increase interest rate, then I have incentive to do financial investment instead of physical investment in goods. Right? So if the interest rate is high, then comparing to buy a bond, comparing to buy a machine, it's better to buy a bond. But if the interest rate is low, compared to buy a bond, I'd rather buy a machine. Machine can produce stuff that's higher than interest rate. So again, this R here is the physical investment. And the R is related to financial investment, which is buying a bond or stock. So when the stock return is high, I will buy stock. Basically this says. When the stock return is low, I will buy a table or buy a machine that will produce actual stuff. So WY, this marginal efficiency of investment curve is downward sloping. So the professor will again explain what this actually is, how to get the equation for it, but I don't need to do that because that won't be understanding.
Are we covering this again next week?
I think another TA is coming next week, and I think he will start after.
I mean, in the lecture.
I think he should. He should cover it tonight next Monday, but I'm not sure because he does different things in different sections, so I don't really know. I only do the lecture of one of the sections, so I don't. Sometimes I don't know what he will cover. But yesterday, I guess he covered some of this already, so I don't know because I didn't go. But anyways, let's continue on with this. So then the last graph is the y and a diagram which we have for long dimensions is y squared. So that would be where we are at this moment. So now, suppose the government now starts any kind of monetary policy, which suppose the government is increasing money supply with some kind of instrument. So suppose government is buying a bond, for example. I mean, suppose Bank Canada is buying a bond, then money supply will increase. So when money supply increases, you can get from the diagram that this equilibrium interest rate will decrease, which causes investment to increase. So money supply increase, the equilibrium line will decrease a bit, and this decrease will cause a movement along this curve because there's only one curve here. So we need to always be along this curve. So investment will change by that much.
Investment in physical machines?
Yeah.
Huh.
So when investment change, you should know from last time the multiplier effect. So is this? So now it becomes just drawing line diagrams. Yeah, you should understand each one, individual one of them, but I'm here just teaching you how to draw this diagram, so yes.
How come there is no change in investment if it's change in actual expenditure? It's like the third one? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right? So if you increase this by some amount, you are adding some over here. Right? So it's the same as adding the government stuff. Right? So it's the same as this policy now, it's only adding investment. So monetary policy basically goes through this thing through investment. So fiscal policy went through government spending or consumption, which is tax. But here it just goes through investment. Because money will affect investments through this interest rate mechanism. So the result here, so the result at this moment is that increased money supply or increased Y. Right? So increased money supply, so here you are increased Y. So decreased money supply, or then decreased Y. But the problem does not end here because of this. Right? We have this thing here. So this point here is ky. But y increased. So So this demand curve will increase. So y here increased. So go back to here. This point will increase from y star to ky star star. Which then what happens is the interest rate will go back up. And when the interest rate go back up, then this graph diagram really becomes very messy at the end. So this one is the second change. Say change second. Go back a bit. So then there is this first change, this second change. So you end up here. But then you cannot probably see the pattern, then you will go back again. But the magnitude of increasing is always smaller. We can prove that mathematically, but you don't need to do that on the exam. So it will just increase a lot, decrease a bit, and increase a bit, and decrease a bit, so it will converge eventually. But that will be the process to go through. So on the exam, your professor may ask you the first 2 iterations. So you do it twice only, which is exactly like this. But
So which one would have the star? The second one will have the star now?
no, we will repeat this process infinite number of times.
And would we put the y star, y2 star, y3 star? Is that the way to do it?
Yeah, you could do this. I think professor may do it differently, but the idea is the same. He might use different notations. I think he used different notation in different places. No, he used 1, 2, 3. So this is y0, this is y1, this is y2. So I think that no, reverse. This is y1, this is y2. Yeah, I should put stars on it because they are included on this. So you should label each one 1, 2, and 3. So this one is the initial I0, I1, and I2. So you can basically label each one of them. You have R0, R1, and R2 as well. So obviously you have R3, R4, and everything until infinity, but the professor won't ask you to do that. The professor won't even ask you to find the limit of that sequence, since it requires more calculus than some of the people know. So I think the professor, as the professor did in the lecture note, he only puts 3 lines, which means 2 iterations. So that's enough. As long as you know that this increase in y will cause this increase in demand, it's okay. Then the next time when it decreases, you should know that it decreased back a little bit. That's just repeating the same line. That's just a recursion. And the bad news is that you need to draw a lot of those diagrams later because you will just keep adding stuff.
R2 will always be smaller than R star, right?
Yeah, we assume that. We don't need to assume, we can prove it, but there's no mathematical reason why it's true. Yeah. Because you probably may think that this will move so large that it even increase higher, but we can prove mathematically that's impossible, but we don't want to do it. So I think later you'll add the forming sector as well, so you have 5 different diagrams that move at the same time. But it will always this kind of recursion will happen. The idea is the same. So we always want to change something to change one. So on the exam, on the coming midterm 4, there will be either be this diagram, exactly this diagram, or the decreased version, obviously. You should draw that way probably with the decreased one supply. But there will be either this, or he gives you the equation for all of them. Then you can solve for the actual R1, R2, and R3, and so on.
how would you do that?
So you, I think when next year comes, you want to do example, because that part is not the demand part, so he'll actually cover my money for the group. So he'll actually do one example with numbers. I think he'll actually calculate like for a lot of times to show you that they are actually getting closer and closer to each other, which is what I did last year as well. So the idea should be clear. You have the equation of everything. Then you can actually calculate the number for every one of them. Now you can calculate this point as the solution to these two equations. So you can, and you after you calculate R, you can substitute in this main equation. Then you can actually get the new I. So you are basically calculating it. You don't calculate change by using multiply anymore. You just solve different equation, different system equation every time. So solving shouldn't be very difficult. So yeah, I think if a question, you should be able to solve it just using this library. But the main idea is how this works and why is there a recursive relation? So why increase and decrease back and then increase and then decrease? You need to understand those from here. I think I'm only supposed to cover until money demand. So I think the other team will actually do example. We'll repeat this one, and then he will do examples with the actual numbers. So this is just giving you an idea.
Also, does it matter if the line touches R or not?
Which one?
Like you drew that it doesn't touch R, is that,
So-
or is it supposed to touch R?
No, this is okay. It doesn't matter as long as this part is done.
Okay.
Actually, so the message that this gives is, so if you have an increase in money supply, then you are creating inflation. But then we increase Y. So you reduce unemployment. And the same thing happening, you are reducing inflation here. Or you decrease Y, which you improve unemployment. So you should probably remember at the beginning of macro, in the first part when we were talking about the trade-off between inflation, and unemployment, this is what it means. So for a government, if I want to fight inflation, I reduce money supply, right? I would throw away some amount of money to reduce inflation, but what that creates is a decrease in Y. Decrease in Y means we are producing more, which we hire less people to produce. We are producing less, so we hire less people to produce less. So then, that's how the classical, or it's not the classical Keynesian, it's just the Keynesian economists are saying. So the classical people are saying, in the long run it works. The Keynesian people are saying there is a trade-off between these two. But currently, in this current economy, obviously it's not. Because right now we have both inflation and unemployment at the same time. So this does not. So government, I don't know what monetary policy he's implementing, but he's definitely implementing recessionary fiscal policy. But the problem is reality does not really work this way. So maybe both of them increase and both of them decrease, which can be explained with the new Keynesian or the neo-Keynesian framework, which we will learn in 208, but we don't care about that. So for this cost, this is true. So there is a trade-off between these. But something you should probably know that is in this economy is wrong. Inflation is completely independent from unemployment. So from the data we have in Canada, at least that's true. But this is, in theory, under a lot of assumptions which are not right. That is the result, which is very important for the final exam. There is this trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Yes, so right now it's a closed economy version. You are learning the open economy version as well. So when there is exchange rate, because exchange rate can affect interest rate as well. So after that, you still have that component. but you approve it different. And one thing you probably notice now is if you actually only increase G or increase T, you will increase Y, but then you will increase this as well. So the fiscal policy will have effect on money as well. So from now on, when you draw the fiscal policy diagram, you cannot only draw this way, because fiscal policy will even affect that. So when we did fiscal policy before, we only have this diagram, right? So we only say that increase in G will increase Y by a certain amount. Now it's not true, because this increase will cause this to increase, and in turn will cause this to increase, which will cause this to decrease back up. So the fiscal policy even has this kind of recursive structure to it. So now both of these things will be affecting all these three diagrams, but the effect is still the same. So increase in G or decrease Y, decrease T will still increase Y, and decrease G or increase T will still. Because in the second iteration, it's always less effective. So it just goes down. So, but these are the main effects, and this is the result, and those are the diagrams. So I think before the midterm, we should practice a lot of that, because either this or this for sure will happen, and you for sure will draw those three diagrams for either of these policies. And you should be able to draw clearly. You need to be able to clearly label which one is which. You shouldn't label the wrong thing. So A1, 2, 3, or you can label as 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, or anything, any label you want, but all the rates should be correct in order to get forward. So computation question is less likely because it's very complicated. As you probably see, covered all. But it's done before as well, so we should be prepared for that. So until this moment, we have covered 4 questions on the midterm already. So there are one left. Maybe the professor may not come in now, so there are some more comments. Well, I guess there will still be the ADMS question, but I hope that is going to do that. So at this moment, national accounts, AEY equilibrium, and money supply, and this thing, so for.
There's a question. First, it was the R with the star. Then it was the R1, right?
Yeah, so
That was
actually I did this. Yeah, I actually did the R0 is the R1. This is R2. This is money, original money.
Okay, so at R1, the second graph, you said the interest drops.
Yeah, so R1 would correspond to I1.
Okay.
So the difference between I0 is, so we should have the I's here. So this is I0. No, this number is not I0, so I should not label it this way. But this is the first change. So this is from I0 to 1. This is from I1 to 2.
So because the output there increased, that's why the aggregate expenditure shifts out, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the shift out causes.
This thing is the same as this.
Okay.
Yes, the shift out causes the equilibrium to switch.
Mm-hmm.
And this equilibrium causes this demand to shift. So. that's just a difficult one. Like,
Which one?
so the AAD and AS, I really demand accuracy. Usually will come next week before the midterm. I don't think he will cover it completely, so maybe so that one actually right. Y is a function of P, the price level, so CPI. So then we not only we have interest rate, we have the price level that's related to the interest rate. So then we have four diagrams, that's it. So at the end we had at four form set, which is the supply and demand for export and import. So the five, and they all move at the same time. So W what will probably go next the rest of the term. But it's just the same idea, but just adding more stuff. That's right.